Welcome back to another episode of Back Points. I'm here today with Charley Schollaert, the 160-pound state champion from 1990 from Yorktown High School in Arlington, Virginia. Charley talks about his path to a state title, which included a 75-foot climbing rope that hung from a tree in his yard, which he would climb with no legs to build his lats and his hand strength. As always, please rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts or subscribe on YouTube. Now let's get rolling.
He taught me to get up when I didn't want to get up, when I wanted to quit.
I had high goals, man. I've always had high goals.
And so when I won it, I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, you guys are right.
It's not the thrill of winning. It's the joy of having that personal goal and being able to achieve that and walk off the mat with your head held high and with your hand up.
That just fueled my fire, and I was in every state championship match from there on until I graduated.
That was when I really started doing the kind of wrestling that I was capable of.
Anybody that steps in the ring and just decides to commit the entire time is a state champion in my book.
Welcome back to Back Points. I'm here with Charley Schollaert, the 1990 state champion from my alma mater, Yorktown High School, at 160 pounds. When I was a wrestler in high school, I saw Charley's name on the wall of champions every time I walked in the wrestling room. So seeing that helped inspire me to try to reach my full potential as a wrestler. But this is the first time that I'm getting to meet Charley and speak to him in depth for this podcast. So I'm thrilled to be here. Charley, welcome to Back Points.
Thanks, Will. Thanks for having me. It's great you're doing this.
So let's start at the beginning. How did you get started in wrestling?
So it was actually it was actually my dad's idea to get going with it. He when I was in second grade, he got me going with it. He got me out with a youth league team in Falls Church. I was living in Arlington at the time, and so that was an experience. I can't say that I was thrilled to be wrestling at the time. I was playing soccer and baseball, and I loved those sports. I enjoyed them more than wrestling. And then it was also the trek out for practice, and the fact that I wasn't going to school with the guys that were on that wrestling team. That made it a bit of a slog for those first couple of years or so. By the time I was in, say, fourth or fifth grade, my dad actually played an instrumental role in starting the Arlington Tigers Youth League. And so when that began, a lot of the guys that I was playing soccer with and playing baseball with and in school with joined that team. And so having my friends wrestle with me made the wrestling more enjoyable. So guys like, say, Houston Middleton, David Hayes, Javier Montez, it just made it more fun to wrestle with guys that were friends. Guys I was going to school with. And then also as I got better at it, I started to enjoy it more and have more fun with it. Then when I got to middle school, the same thing was it kind of got more fun because I was in school. I went to Williamsburg, and I was in school with guys that were on my team. So Jeremy Martin, Robert Nooner, people like that. That made it a lot more fun to have the wrestling as part of the school experience. And I started to develop more of an appreciation for the sport. The fact that I'd started when I was so young gave me a huge leg up in terms of my skills. And I've watched some of the podcasts that you've done here, and it's everyone I've seen, guys. They were interested in wrestling in kind of a self-starting kind of a way. And they attained great success through their own initiative and everything, and that's actually more impressive than the route I took to my success, having all the support I had from my dad along the way, because he also had me go off to wrestling camps in the summer. But it was a tremendous amount of work doing it, and so that's how I got started with the wrestling, and then I started to really enjoy the sport later on. as I was good at it, as I saw as I started to enjoy all the aspects of the sport, as I got older, and then in high school, with the great coaching that we had with Coach Brooks and the assistant coaches there, Bob Valentine, Tom Shabika, people like that, and then the team. Yorktown had a great team back then, and so I got to in my class people like again Jeremy Martin, Robert Nooner, Pat Moran, Ron Wood, and then in the class above me people like Paul Androkonis and Clint Boyd and Eric Vanderflute, Juan Mejia. I mean, a lot of great wrestlers. So we won the district. I think for at least 3 years that I was there, and so we were very competitive. And then of course the guys below me as well. You've interviewed Rob Chavez. He was on the team. And Brock Boyd as well was on the team. So we had a lot of good, solid guys contributing, and so that made the wrestling all that much more enjoyable. And so the fact that I started when I was the second grade kind of faded away.
So it's interesting to me because I didn't have the advantage of starting when I was really young. However, my parents got me started in karate when I was, I don't know, probably third grade, fourth grade, something like that. And I wanted to quit. I hated it. I can distinctly remember thinking that I wouldn't be going to karate practice if I wasn't being forced to go. And it sounds like that was kind of a similar experience that you had with wrestling very early on. So for me, I also, at a certain point, I was very grateful to my parents for pushing me through that. By the time I was, let's say, a green belt or at that point, I started getting self-motivated. And I can remember, I really was motivated to become a black belt as quickly as possible. And maybe even earlier than that, maybe even, the second level as a yellow belt. But in any case, I remember really not wanting to continue with it. And then I remember being grateful after being kind of pushed through that. Do you recall, this is probably a tough question, but do you recall when you were self-motivated? Like, was that middle school? Was it before middle school? Was it high school? When did you feel like you started going on your own volition?
I would say it was probably middle school time frame.
Okay.
Because I started to see the success that I could attain with the sport, and as it became that much more fun, as you're having more success with it.
Yeah.
When I was able to wrestle with my classmates, my friends, guys I was with all the time, played football with a lot of the guys too that wrestled, and so that part of it made it that much more fun. And so that's when I really started to apply myself that much more to the sport and study things and work harder at it and care much more about the success. I mean, I will say that it is a good sport. It was a good sport for me, for my physique, for the I have. And so in that sense, my dad had good vision to get me doing it at an early age. He kind of chose correctly in that sense. With other sports, there can be discretion that coaches come into play where they don't let you necessarily play the position you want.
Sure.
Or there can be team dynamics and things that can be challenging. Wrestling being an individual sport, you control your own destiny, and so you can. And if you can beat your opponents, you can then win the spot for that, to represent the team.
Yeah.
You're much more in control of the success that you attain in wrestling. I mean, like tennis is the same way. Other sports that are individual are the same way. That's not to say that I love team sports as well. I played football at Yorktown and love that. And so there are pluses and minuses for both kinds of sports.
So it sounds like you were very close with your teammates in high school.
Yeah, no, we had a great team. I mean, it was a great bunch of guys and great coaches as well. I had the same coach you had, Scott Brooks, great head coach. And then we had Bobby Valentine as the assistant coach. ex-Marine. He was an awesome coach. He went on to head coach at South Lakes. Tom Shabika was another one, who was a really good assistant coach. And then teammates, yeah, I mean, it was, just a great bunch of guys. Played football with a lot of the guys. And so guys like Jeremy Martin, Pat Moran, Tom Beach, Zach Jocelyn, Ron Wood, Robert Nooner. In the later class, Paul Androkonis, Juan Mejia, just a great collection of guys, and that was a big part of the experience, the camaraderie, the team aspect of it, and working hard, training hard. It's been 30 years, right? So it's been a while. Thinking back to everything. So it's a little, memory's a little bit hazy at this point, but I mean that was if you're, it was a great part of the overall experience.
So before you were in high school, were you working out individually, not as a part of a team, just as part of kind of a club? And did you not have as much of a team connection when you were working out, when your dad was taking you to events?
So the first team I was on was Falls Church Youth League. That was when I was in third grade or so. And so that was a lot of guys I wouldn't have been around because I was living in Arlington, and so it wouldn't have had occasion to kind of form friendships outside the wrestling team. Then my dad started the youth league at Arlington, the Arlington Tigers wrestling club. I think that was about when I was in fourth grade or so, and so there were a lot of guys that joined the youth league that I ended up. Some of them, a few of them wrestled with later on in high school, and then also Coach Brooks did help out coaching that league, so that was cool. And then I also did Beltway for a couple years, and Brian Hazard, who you also interviewed, he was one of my teammates back then on the Rams Wrestling Club. That was that was some elite wrestling back then. I got my butt handed to me a few times in some of those matches.
So you've mentioned other sports a few times here. Were you, did you compete in other sports all through high school and in youth wrestling, or at a certain point, did you focus only on wrestling?
I played football all the way through. Love football. I mean, the adrenaline rush of a football game is an amazing thing. It's if I was bigger and faster and stronger, I mean, I would have played football in college, and if I could have had an NFL career, that would have been awesome. But by the time I was done with football and wrestling, I'd had enough of sports in high school. Didn't want to do something in the spring. But I'd played baseball for many years and loved that. Wasn't as good at baseball as I was the other two sports. So yeah, no, I love all kinds of sports, and sports in general are a great thing. Just lots of fun and great to be physically fit and all that.
Yeah. Well, so to get back to your youth days, I think that having friends on the team and having kind of a cohesive team drives a lot of kids to stay in the sport, to excel in wrestling. Sounds like that was influential for you as well. Did you, when you started wrestling in youth, the youth program, did you sort of get more serious as you went along, or were you kind of always the same sort of level and you just progressed from a technical perspective?
Oh yeah, no, I definitely got more serious as it went along, and you see as the stakes are rising, and you see how much more you have to put into it to do well and to succeed as the competition gets stiffer, and it definitely gets stiffer as you get onto a varsity high school team, and then even far stiffer from there when you get into college. So yes, I mean I spent a lot of time just working on my wrestling skills. In the early years, and then in the later years, you're continuing to improve your skills and continuing to get better at different moves and expand your repertoire. And then there are also other aspects of the sport that become a lot more important, like you get better at knowing what your opponent is giving you, what sort of things can work well based on whatever they're showing in the match, whether you're standing or you're in the top or bottom positions. You get better about the whole nutrition thing, and it sounds like what I've been learning from watching some of these podcasts is that the rules have changed, and the whole weight loss aspect of it is no longer as big of a deal as it was back when I was wrestling. I didn't cut a ton of weight, but I cut enough. I cut about 15 pounds my senior year, 15 to 20 pounds, and so getting good on nutrition and knowing how to do a diet the right ways, and then having the right kinds of meals on the match day, so you can max out your energy level. That was really important. That was a really important aspect of things when I got into high school. And of course, improving your cardio and getting into great shape and great strength, and the kind of strength that lasts throughout the course of the match, as opposed to just that burst strength that can last for a few seconds, but then after a couple minutes it dissipates a ton, right? So you want to be kind of perfecting the right kind of strength, getting your cardio up to snuff, and then figuring out how to manage your nerves and how to get psyched up for a match and how to get out there. And for me, it was a lot of listening to good music, to good rock music, getting pumped up, and kind of, I didn't do a lot of visualization necessarily, but that can work for guys doing that. And
did you get any guidance? Did you get any guidance on how to calm your nerves? Did your coach tell you about, listening to music beforehand, or were you kind of on your own to think through how to prepare mentally for a match?
It's kind of on my own. It's kind of on my own that way. I don't recall any particular insights back then about how to calm the nerves. But it was a lot of some thinking through, what you're going to do, and how you're going to tackle the match, knowing whatever you knew about your opponent, and what their particular ways of approaching the match would be.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned cutting weight, and you're right. There have been a lot of rule changes around that. And the way that I think of it now as a current coach is I think of it more as smart weight management rather than cutting weight. There are rules against, when you and I wrestled, we would probably, I would lose 6 pounds, 7 pounds the night before. I would have already lost 6 or 7 pounds earlier in the season, so there was a real cut right before weigh-in. You can't do that unhealthy kind of dehydration now. And so you could, so you have to be much more methodical, and you have to lose weight with a certain process, where you're doing it in a healthy way. It's monitored. So the result is there is a lot less, unhealthy weight loss. So when you were wrestling, did you cut 15 pounds all 4 years, or did you have, for me, I cut a lot of weight as a freshman. I cut a little bit of weight as a sophomore. I didn't cut any weight as a junior. And then my senior year, I probably did it right. I didn't, I was in a very healthy weight class for myself. I certainly would have loved to eat more than I was eating, but I wouldn't say that I was making myself totally miserable all the time. Mm-hmm. What about you? Did you all 4 years have the same kind of weight cutting experience?
Freshman, sophomore year, let's see, I wrestled at, I think it was 138 freshman and sophomore years. Might have been 132 freshman year. Didn't lose as much weight then because I just wasn't as competitive, and I think just based on the way the team was, it didn't make as much sense to lose as much weight. Junior year, I was 152, and I think I cut about 10 to 12 pounds, but it would have been, what I was doing back then, and then senior year I was 160, and outside of wrestling I was about 180. But what I was doing was I was I was dieting to the point of losing about 15 pounds or so junior and senior year for the season, keeping it off. And then I would lose the 4 or 5 pounds the night before for the weigh-in. Of course, you'd have those days at school where you're ghost white and your energy is totally depleted, and you're waiting for the weigh-in to happen after school. And
I remember those days.
Dehydrated, and it's a good thing they've done away with that, because
I agree.
You just don't need to. High school shouldn't be about those kinds of tortuous experiences.
I agree, and it also drives a lot of kids out of the sport. I think I've talked to a number of people who were elite level, and they almost quit because of cutting weight. And then you read about the system in Russia where they've got far more people enrolled in wrestling, and they don't really focus on weight loss in the same way. They don't seem to put certainly not their youth through weight cutting. They also seem to have less of a focus on competitions in general until they get to the higher levels. But, I think that rethinking weight loss is a really good thing, probably.
Yeah.
But for you, it sounds like your most successful year. So your most successful year, I'm assuming here, was your senior year. You were 160. That was the year you won the state title, and you were cutting, a pretty reasonable amount at that point. You were cutting 10, I think you said 10 pounds.
15. Good 15.
Yeah. And then the final 5 would be kind of water weight that you'd cut. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I had, I had been around the sport for a while, and I had so I'd seen a lot, and I'd seen guys, and I'd heard stories of guys stunting their growth from all the weight loss that they'd engaged in over the course of their high school career. So I wanted to avoid doing anything like that, and so I made sure I dieted well, and of course worked on it with my teammates. We all would kind of get together and discuss nutrition and the best things to eat, and
interesting,
share tidbits and stuff like that. So it was like a team effort, really, for good dieting practices.
Did anybody on the team in particular set a good example about that, or provide leadership around that sort of thing?
We all talked about it. We talked about it kind of equally. We'd all bring our insights, speak about whatever food we'd had and how that made us feel for any given match, and if it was spaghetti and we were carbo loading, we just talked about our experiences. I can remember one match, one guy this was probably my freshman year, he had a steak before his match, and that didn't go over well. We know that it takes what, a day or something for the body to process steak. He said that wasn't the best thing to have, and he didn't have as successful a match as he was hoping because of that.
So that's great, though. So you were really thinking through and talking through, by trial and error, what worked, what didn't, and trying to learn, how best to help yourself peak in a match.
Oh yeah, we were even eating baby food after a weigh-in, because baby food is so broken down and processed that the body can assimilate it really quickly, and so that was a favorite. So
that's still a favorite of wrestlers today.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They not necessarily the baby food, but like the Pedialyte, drink. That's pretty popular. I never got into that, even though I did a fair amount of weight cutting. I never had the Pedialyte, but apparently a lot of folks do.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome.
Do you have any regrets in terms of losing weight, or, do you feel like you were, generally speaking, you were at the right weight classes each year?
Yeah, no regrets. It was tough to lose the weight and to have to watch your diet and not eat like your other friends who aren't wrestling or eating. So obviously if you could avoid that, it'd be nice to avoid that experience. But it was, it was fine overall. I wasn't cutting so much weight that it was negatively impacting my life. I saw people, not at Yorktown, but other teams who were doing that. You could tell they'd have a 6'2" frame, and they're wrestling at like 112 or something, and they're making themselves totally emaciated. And you just glad that none of those things ever were around Yorktown back then. So high school was as far as I ended up taking it. I contemplated wrestling in college, went out for a few days, but the amount of commitment that was required, the weight loss that would have been required, the level of competition being what it was, and knowing that I was going to get beaten up a lot, I just, it was the kind of thing that I just didn't. I had other things that ended up, occupying my time in college, stuff like rugby and other club sports and other things. So yeah, I didn't. It goes back to wrestling is not the thing that was like my be all end all. As much as I like the sport, I love lots of sports, and I just love sports in general and competing athletically, and so if you're going to combine tons of weight loss and many hours of commitment a day and getting beaten up and all the things that would have transpired in a college career with wrestling, I elected to hang up the hat.
So let's walk me through your 4 years of college. I'm sorry, your 4 years of high school. Did you make it to the state tournament multiple times?
Sophomore year, I won districts, and I did not make it to states sophomore year. Junior year, I did. So I won districts. I think I won the region, and then I took fifth in states junior year. And then senior year, all across the board, yeah. So, go ahead.
So, was there anything that changed in particular for you? Did you have the rope all 4 years in high school, or was that just your senior year? Was there anything in particular that changed junior year to senior year? Was that the year that you made the biggest leap in ability, or was it just a gradual progression towards getting towards your senior year?
Yeah, just a gradual progression. I mean, you're just a little more competitive each year because you're bigger and stronger and older than you were the year before, and you're going up against competition that's in some cases younger than you, progressing. And then you're also just getting better at the sport because you're doing it more. In all ways, right? You're better at your moves. Your takedowns are better. Your bottom moves, your top moves are all better. And you're better mentally. You have a better sense of what to do when. Your preparation is better. So yeah, it was just a gradual progression of just getting a little better every year. So that was the and then my senior year was just a lot of fun to have the success that I had with the way it all went down. And you don't really know going in, going up against, it's hard to predict what kind of competition you're going to have.
Did you were you favored to win the state tournament?
I don't know if there were actual favorites back then. I mean, it was I don't know if anybody would have how they would have bet on things if that was possible. Yeah. I mean, I had no idea who the guys I went up against.
Okay.
They weren't from the Northern Virginia region. I didn't know, didn't have any idea what they were going to be like, except for watching, maybe a video match of them during the state tournament. So yeah, it's a very much an unknown quantity. You're not sure if you're going to get what's going to happen with any of the matches.
Did you ever do any camps during the summertime?
Yeah, no, I did. I did some camps in Pennsylvania. Did a couple camps there, and then also there was Coach Brooks ran a wrestling camp a couple summers at least, like 2 a day type things that I ended up taking part in.
Was that held in the Yorktown wrestling room?
Yeah, Yorktown, and then also I think it was Yorktown. It might have also been W&L, which of course I know the name's changed to W&L, but yeah, back then it was W&L. yeah, so that was guys it attracted guys from the 3 high schools in Arlington.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just exclusively Yorktown.
Mm-hmm. Did anybody encourage you specifically to set your goal as a state championship, or was that just something you independently, you didn't even need any encouragement to think about?
Didn't need encouragement for that one. I mean, you just know. I'd have to say I didn't like sort of map it out years in advance and say, I want to attain this, so I'm going to do X, Y, and Z over the course of several years to get there. I can't say that I would have had that kind of vision back then. But it was, you just know that as you progressively get better and you keep working hard at it and trying hard and, getting yourself in good shape and all that stuff, that you can put yourself in a place, to make it happen. Like a lot of things in life. I mean, some things, sometimes things don't work out and you got to be resilient and get back in the saddle and suit back up and try again and learn from your mistakes and all that. So it wasn't like I mean, the other thing too, I think that can happen is you can attain something like that, and then you can kind of spend too much of your life like basking in the glory of something that you attained when you were really young, and so that can cause you to not keep kind of working hard and honing your craft, whatever that might be, and getting better at whatever it is you're doing and perfecting yourself. And so, yeah, I mean, it was a great thing, great experience, great thing to kind of have under my belt. But yeah, it was I don't want to build it up into something that something beyond what it was. It was just, and again, I started wrestling when I was in 2nd grade, right? So I had a huge leg up. When you start something when you're that young, you just have so much of an advantage because things are so much more instinctive. And in wrestling, it's really important that things are instinctive. For anybody who doesn't have that advantage, like I watched the Rob Chavez podcast you did and hear his story about how he had a little bit of a glimpse of wrestling when he was, I think it was in like 7th grade or something, and then didn't get back until he was in high school. That's a great story of somebody who's just dedicated and wants to kick butt, wants to do well, loves the sport. I mean, you can find ways to just constantly be working at it and perfecting your craft and everything and getting there. So you don't necessarily need those elementary school years as a leg up. You can work on it, in your teens.
Yeah, I think both stories are great. I mean, sometimes, you've got somebody that's worked at it since 2nd grade and they progress throughout. And I mean, I think that's a great accomplishment. And then it's also a great story to hear. I just published an episode today with Andrew Abrams from Herndon. And, he started essentially as a freshman, and by his senior year, he was able to win a state title. It's fascinating to hear all the different journeys that people have. But I agree with you that it's very important mentally to handle success well. And, it's certainly possible to not move forward either because you failed early on or because you succeed early on. I think that kind of guidance that young people need. I think it's important for coaches to try to give that guidance to wrestlers, regardless of the outcome, because not everyone's going to win. And it's really more about how you respond to either success or failure that really defines, how happy you're going to be, how productive you're going to be, all of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important, to be resilient, and to make sure you're doing what you love to do, what you enjoy doing, and to be doing it in a sense of enjoying the craft aspect of it, enjoying the things that you're doing as opposed to the rewards that you might get from those things. It's that's one thing you learn more and more over the course of your life, it's really important, even if some of our systems are set up when we're young to not necessarily be that way, because we know that if you do attain the prize and it helps you get into a school, say, or it helps you do certain things to get yourself a leg up, and those are important things. I'm not trying to minimize them, but it's also good to keep everything in perspective and to have that big picture, and to recognize that it's just very important to be more thoughtful around the idea of just enjoying the spirit of competition for the sake of the competition. That it improves you, it perfects you, it gets you better, and it also it's a fun thing with your opponent as well. I mean, it's an enjoyable kind of back and forth. So even even when I lost, I tried to keep perspective on it. Losing isn't fun, though, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think we can all agree on that. So did you have good practice partners? I know you were close with your teammates, but were they competing at the same level that you were competing at?
Yeah, and everybody was. It was we had a really good team. We won the district. I think my sophomore, junior, and senior year, and we did well in the region. A lot of guys that worked really hard. And we're dedicated. Let's see, it was a really good sense of competition and pushing each other, and being supportive of one another. And that was a big part of our success as well. Just the camaraderie and the fact that a lot of us played football together. We did other sports together. We hung out outside the wrestling room together, and so that that kind of fueled the success of all of us.
And I know your father supported you a lot with your youth and your high school wrestling. Did he or anybody else did they push you to wrestle in college afterwards?
Yeah, no, my dad was he was disappointed when I told him I wasn't going to be wrestling in college. But it was just a decision that I needed to make. Didn't want to keep it going. I mean, in college, you really have to love. I think you have to absolutely love. Yeah. I don't know if you wrestled in college, but it's the kind of thing that you have to have so much dedication to it if you want to do well. And I, at that point, just had figured out, had a really good experience with it, and had enough. Yeah. I mean, wrestling's also a good. The thing about it that's also good is that you are reliant on your teammates, of course, in many ways, but in other ways you're not. And so, say in football, if you're a great running back, but you have a really bad offensive line, you're not gonna excel. Wrestling, it's very much, even if you have poor coaching, like you could easily, not easily, but you could, through persistence and hard work, you can succeed. So it's very much an individually driven thing. And you're not as reliant as you are in other sports on your teammates for your success. And so that's one thing about it that's a nice differentiator.
So you've mentioned coaching, and I understand your father was not a wrestler himself. Did Coach Brooks, the head coach, did he run the practice room, generally speaking, or was the assistant coach? And I think did you only have two coaches in the room, generally speaking?
We had two. Actually, we probably had three, because there would have been another, like sort of an assistant who was maybe student teaching or something, and was involved. Coach Brooks would run the practices. Coach Valentine would run parts of the practices. And it's hard for me to remember exactly how the practices went. How much of it was instruction on different moves, how much of it was training, was actually getting wrestling and getting better that way. How much of it was cardio and working out. hard for me to remember exactly what the breakdown was, but it included all those different things. And I don't know, they're probably an hour and a half long or something like that, 2 hours.
Yeah, I think about 2 hours is average. Now, for our team, we've been doing in a bit of a rebuilding phase, and so we've had significantly longer practices. I think ideally 2.5 hours is what is what a lot of programs are going for these days. So are there any parting words of wisdom you want to share with with wrestlers who who look up at the wall of champions and think that they want to get their name up there? Any advice you'd give them?
Go after it. If you want to achieve it, just develop your plan. Make sure you are being honest with yourself about how you're going about attaining that plan, and kind of while you don't want to go easy on yourself as you are getting yourself in good shape and as you're learning your craft and how to do well and how to do well at a really high level. You also want to keep everything in perspective and make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and be happy with the ways that you are getting better, and enjoy the fact that you are getting better at it, and you're taking some pride just in the fact that your craft is improving. And then if it all comes together and you could find yourself in a situation where your weight class is stacked, and it would just be an impossibility to win states or to attain whatever goal you set out for yourself. And it's okay. You can. It's just there are all kinds of factors that come into play, and so I guess be thinking about your wrestling, your approach to wrestling, and how you can go about attaining whatever goals you set for yourself, but also be thinking about how that can apply to your life at large, and how you can take the ways that you've prepared and driven yourself and achieve certain things in wrestling to apply them, across the board throughout your life, and develop different practices and different approaches, things that can help you beyond your wrestling career. Because and that's the good thing about wrestling. It's a sport that's got all kinds of different facets to it.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that drove you to love wrestling?
Well, so I similar things. I loved the competition. I really loved the self-improvement aspect of it. So for me, it was natural for me to sort of compete against myself and to try to get better than I was before. So I think that was a really big motivator for me. Now, I also really connected with my teammates. And so I think that, the camaraderie of, even though it's not, it's sort of a team sport, but it's obviously an individual sport primarily. But having the right team members really does, drive you on. And that definitely motivated me. And, I agree with what you said as well. I think, somebody else said that you will start winning more when you start to care more about how you perform than about what the outcome is. So if you just say, I want to wrestle really well in this match, that is a healthier attitude than saying, I really want to win this match. Obviously you want to win, there's no question there. But what really matters isn't whether you win exactly. It is, are you performing the way you want to perform? And, once you start doing that, then your winning is going to increase.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you're watching the video of your match, if you are happy with everything you did, and you did as much as you could have done, at each time to put yourself in a position to win, and you just didn't win, you can't, you should be happy with that performance that you put in, and the way it all went. Yeah. I mean, so that's a very good point to think about it in those terms.
Well, I really appreciate having you on Back Points. This has been a wonderful interview, and I know that people are really going to benefit from hearing about your story. Thanks so much for joining us, Charley.
Thank you very much, Will. It's been an honor to be on. It's great that you're doing these podcasts. Great idea to get this going, and yeah, no, it's an honor to talk to you today and tell my story.
Thanks for listening to Back Points today. If you want to support the show, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you find the show. Also, it helps us if you give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Feel free to also make a donation via Patreon at patreon.com/backpoints. Thanks, and see you next episode.